All right, I'd like to call to order the Long Hill Township Committee meeting of September 27th at 7:32 p.m. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Debbie, if you could call the roll, please.
Committeeman Dorsey?
Here.
Committeeman Paserchia?
Present.
Deputy Mayor Ray?
Present.
Mayor Schuler?
Here. So I'd like to begin with a proclamation from Watchung Hills Regional High School for anti-bullying. I'm going to try and get these names correct. If Alana Margulies, did I get that right? Helen Yang, Melissa Hertzberg, and Stella DeMizio. You guys could come up, please. Whereas Watchung Hills Regional High School has been proactive in a mission to end bullying and intolerance in their school and in our community, and whereas Watchung Hills Regional High School is an active member of the Not in Our Schools campaign, and whereas the Watchung Hills Regional High School over the last 2 years has won state and national recognitions for the anti-bullying work of their staff and students, and whereas Watchung Hills Regional High School is asking all members of our greater community to wear white on Friday.
October 6th. Did I miss that one?
Yes, you have the wrong date. Friday, October 6th, 2017, in solidarity against bullying and intolerance. And whereas the Township Committee of Long Hill would like to commend and support the Watchung Hills Regional High School for becoming a leader in the ongoing initiative to end bullying. And whereas the Township Committee would like to enlist the support of our elementary schools and our middle schools, local business, and community members in this movement against bullying. Now, therefore, in recognition of the important work being done by the staff and students of Watchung Hills Regional High School to bring awareness to their students and our community, I, Cornell Schuler Jr., Mayor of the Township of Long Hill, do hereby proclaim October 6, 2017 to be Whiteout Against Bullying Day, and urge all citizens to actively participate on this day in an effort to help Watchung Hills Regional High School achieve their goal to have the entire community wear white and unite to say, not in our schools, not in our community. Thank you. Did you girls have, did you have something to say, or use the mic?
Oh, okay. Okay, so my name's Alana Margulies.
My name is Helen Yang.
I'm Stella DeMizio.
Yeah, and so we're from the Diversity Club at Watchung Hills. Our main goal is to promote acceptance and diversity and celebrate diversity in our community. And one way we're doing this is with the Whiteout event. So we'll have different activities going on in the school throughout the first week of October, and then it's all culminating in the Whiteout football game on Friday, which is the homecoming game. And we're inviting the whole community to come and wear white. Senator Kane and Captain Pino from the Sheriff's Office will be there to say a few words to the crowd, and we're all going to read a pledge together. So we encourage everyone to come, and yeah.
So the Whiteout Against Bullying is an initiative that we've developed throughout, I guess, the course of about 5 years now. And this year, we really wanted to correspond with October, which is National Anti-Bullying Month, to create this Whiteout Against Bullying Week. So we're doing a lot of activities with different grades at our school, and also, like Alana said, the Whiteout Against Bullying Day, on which everyone will be encouraged to wear white. So I really hope we have your support.
As someone from Long Hill, I know how well our middle school and elementary schools are, building on the momentum of anti-bullying movement. So I think it'd be great if, we had middle schoolers, elementary schoolers, and adults to show about this football game, to show the continuing support for the anti-bullying movement at the high school level. So thank you.
We have some flyers here that if you, about the event, if you wanted to take one maybe, or put it up in or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Photo op for the newspaper. All right, we now have a presentation from Chief Mazzio.
Good evening. We're here tonight for one of the more special occasions that we have to come here and gather together as brothers and sisters in law enforcement, rescue, and EMT. There was an incident that took place on an early morning in May of this year, and 3 of the officers from Long Hill Township took the initiative to quickly assess a situation that was going very bad, take quick and responsive action, and because of their action in which they took, saved an individual's life. But with that to be said, I'd like to call up Officer John Caselli, Officer John Roberts, and Sergeant Chris Gelino. I'd like to present each one of these officers with a certificate of commendation, and it's a medical assist award. And I'm just going to read what the inscription says on the commendation, which says that on May 6, 2017, Officers John Caselli, Officers John Roberts, and Sergeant Chris Gelino responded to a 911 call for a male who was unconscious and not breathing. Officer Caselli conducted rapid patient assessment, immediately began CPR, and applied automated defibrillator. After multiple cycles of CPR and 2 rounds of defibrillation, the patient began to breathe again, regain pulse, and the officers continued to monitor the patient's breathing pulse until the care was transitioned to Long Hill Township First Aid Squad and the EMTs from the hospital. But I'd also like to call up all the members or the individuals that were there that day, if I could, to recognize you also. So is that possible, Bob, for everybody to come up? I just want to say their names.
This was part of the crew that responded when the 911 call came in. It happened to be on a Saturday, I believe. Wasn't it a Saturday morning? So there were a lot of folks around. And I think we had pretty close to a dozen responders show up. Myself, Bob English. We also have, and let me go through the Long Hill squad, Michelle Lipkin, Carly Schneider, Lisa Scanlon, Rich Pavement, and also Gordon Redgate, and we had a few other guys also that responded but couldn't be here tonight. But I would also like to thank the 2 paramedics, because they're the people in the back of the ambulance administering medications and talking to the doctor and evaluating EKGs. That's these 2 folks right here, Michelle Russell and also Scott Levine from Atlantic Healthcare. So we thank you all for your efforts that day.
And again, I'd just like to say that the officers that work here for the Long Hill Township Police Department work so well with the first aid squad and with the paramedics that come on scene. And also just recently they had an incident where they had a bee sting, and the person went into a very severe shock. And with the assistance of our police officers continually keeping the patient awake and alert, and with the squad arriving and the paramedics also arriving, that person also was able to be revived and back up and doing well. So I just want to say thank you for the cooperation between the agencies that are working together on a daily basis to keep everyone safe. And I guess at this point, I should have given you the awards already, but here you go. Congratulations to John, Officer John Caselli, Officer John Roberts. Congratulations. And Sergeant Chris Gelino. Congratulations. Also, we have a special guest. If that's possible, the patient wants to come up here.
Patient,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
I just need to say that, you know, a lot of times we take people for granted, you know, and you hear a lot of things said like it really does take a community, and it really does take a community. And I'm here to testify, where's a cop when you need him? You only need to dial 911, and your life can be saved, and the follow-up commitment of people to take care of one, to get him to the next level. I can't thank you all enough for what you've done for me and my family. I just need to say that. And, you know, I wasn't around for a lot of it, obviously. I was unconscious and whatever. But every doctor I ran into and every nurse that I've talked to since then has told me how lucky I am. And that really boils down to how fortunate we are as a community to have such well-trained people to take care of us. Because it really is a service that these men and women perform for us. Because you can have a job for the township, many of us can, but this requires skill and commitment. These people go above and beyond to have the skill level to save a person's life. And I just needed to say that. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, I remember that night. It's not right field.
That's my line.
Quit.
He's right behind you. The Trump was setting up.
Oh, yeah, I'll be like 2 seconds.
Yes, guy. Take care. Gordon, be good, buddy. Hey, control your board. I'm trying.
So I'm just going to give two.
We are fortunate.
Until they clear out.
Well, I was going to say thank you to them, but I guess for those watching on TV, we are fortunate in Long Hill to have such a great group of volunteers at the First Aid Squad and a group of well-prepared police officers in Long Hill Township. They saved a person's life. That's no short order. So thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. Chief, you have some comments about Valley Road?
Yeah, just a quick update on what's taking place on Valley Road. The last couple weeks have been, very active on Valley Road. Also on Myersville, we've had, 6 contractors on the road at one time. As of today, we've had no incident, which is also great, but they are changing up a little bit due to some logistics from Schifano, who is doing the milling and paving project for Valley Road. So the intention was to start from River Road and go to Main, and then go from Main to Morristown, and then Morristown down to Mountain. And that was all going to be part of the milling. But what they're going to do now is they're going to continue from River to Northfield, Northfield to, say, Sussex, and then Sussex to Maine, and then backtrack and go back and pave from River, just repeat the same process. So they're going to start paving sooner than milling the whole roadway and then coming back and paving. So they're at Northfield now. Tomorrow they're going to go from Northfield to, say, Sussex Greenwood, Greenwood to Maine. That'll all be milled. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday they'll come back and start the paving on River to Northfield, and then progressively keep going to Maine, and then from Maine they'll start milling again. So it changed a little bit. Rather than milling the whole thing, now they're going to mill a portion, pave, mill a portion, pave, and the same thing. So it just changed up a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll make that available through the Facebook page. We'll possibly send out a blast with tonight's notification. It really shouldn't modify anything that hasn't been made aware of already between the schools and the first aid squads and fire departments. Everybody's been working together to know what we're doing.
Okay. If I could ask, when they get to Main Ave to Morristown, to the businesses, what can they expect as far as disruptions to entry and exit to their driveway?
Right. Obviously, there is going to be some type of disruption. When they're milling the road, there's going to be 2 lanes actively open. But as in all big projects, you will be slowed down a little bit, but you should be able to get to where you're going with no problem.
Okay.
What we've done too is we tried to get them to go from a day paving in that business district, but they wanted a night differential. The problem became is they just didn't want a night differential for that one section. They wanted a night differential for the entire job. I didn't think that the people, especially the residents that live along that residential area, to hear, grinding, milling, and paving at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't think that would have been fair for them either. So what we're going to do is once we start to mill that section from Main Avenue to Morristown, I've allowed them to start at 4:30 in the morning. So we're going to do the one portion where most of the stores are, get that asphalt down there so it has a couple hours to cure, and then move along up north until it gets done.
Okay.
So we have a plan. Not sure if it's going to work, but we can plan.
Well, we've paved Valley Road before, and we've survived, so I would expect that we'll get through this one as well, so.
And Chief, you had mentioned to me earlier that residents have been very cooperative and understanding, so
The residents have been unbelievable.
I commend them.
Unbelievable, because, you know, I was expecting more comment, and I really haven't gotten any. So I just want to commend all the people from Long Hill Township that are commuting, that, you know, they understand that the road has to get done, and, you know, we're all in it together, and once it's done, it's going to be beautiful, so.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate the update. We have a couple of appointments. There is a mayoral appointment to the Environmental Commission, Mr. Terry Carruthers, and there are procedural Township Committee appointment, appointing Administrator Nancy Malul to the Promotion and Enhancement Advisory Committee, the Wastewater Management Advisory Committee, Passaic Valley Park Vision Subcommittee, Communications Advisory Committee, and Traffic Advisory Committee. Congratulations, Nancy. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Can we add anything?
Second.
Can I get a-
Committeeman Dorsey?
Yes.
Committeeman Paserchia?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ray?
Yes.
Mayor Schuler?
Yes. Liaison reports. I'll start on my right. Matt?
Nothing to report, sir.
Thank you.
I have nothing to report.
Thank you.
Oh.
Good. No.
Kidding aside, I wanted to mention something about the wastewater, but should we do that at the end during old business? Not now.
Yeah.
Microphone. Let's do it at old business rather than.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep. Okay. Then moving on to consent agenda. Does anyone have anything to remove for discussion?
I'll move resolution 17-257 to resolution 17-263, as stated in the agenda.
262.
262. Thanks, Guy.
Second.
Committeeman Dorsey?
Yes.
Committeeman Paserchia?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ray?
Yes.
Mayor Schuler?
Yes. Resolution 17-263, authorizing the township clerk to file certification of township committee review of 2017 best practices inventory. Nancy, do you have any background on this?
Yeah, this is the Division of Local Government Services best practices inventory that they've come up with every year. This year it is reduced to 25 questions, I believe. It is a way for the state to make sure that municipalities are doing the best that they can for their residents. And if we're not, if you have so many no's or so many answers that don't comply with best practices, then they will take away a certain amount of your state aid. I believe we only had one no or one negative on this inventory, which involved update of personnel policy, which I'm working on. So next year that should be changed to a yes. I believe we would have had to have at least 5 no's in order to have any reduction in state aid. So, we're in pretty good shape, and the one no will be changed for a yes next year.
Very good. Anyone have any questions?
No.
Would someone be so kind?
Move resolution 17-253 as stated in the agenda.
263.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, problem with the numbers.
Yeah, 263, yeah. Should have that G&T at lunch.
He's doing the best he can, Mayor.
Could we have a second?
Committeeman Dorsey?
Yes.
Committeeman Paserchia?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ray?
Yes.
Mayor Schuler?
Yes. Moving on to discussion items, I'm going to change the order a little bit. Move Valley Road redevelopment hardship application to the top. I believe we have Dave Cecchio. Did I get that right? from Elite Developers to give us some background on this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Could you spell your last name for me, please?
Checchio. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Checchio. I'm from Elite Properties, and we were the winning respondent to the RFP for the Valley Road area in need of redevelopment. And our concept, we've been working with your redevelopment committee to advance the concept forward, and the threshold issue that has to be answered at this point is a question of allowing the redevelopment to move forward because it's in a flood hazard area. As most of the neighborhood is a lot of Long Hill happens to be. Because it's in a flood hazard area, there's a prohibition, a general prohibition against building any additional residential. And our proposal was for a mixed-use development, So the DEP requires that we file a formal hardship, an application for a hardship exception from this rule, again, to allow the project to advance. We've prepared, working in conjunction with the township, we've prepared a hardship, an exception argument, and we've done a good deal of surveying of the surrounding roads to get a real sense of how much of how much of an exception this really is. If I may, I'll give you a little bit of how the sausage is made, a little bit of technical detail, which I think is why you would like me to be here tonight. The flood hazard elevation in this particular area, the Valley Road area in need of redevelopment, is 215 feet, 0.7 above sea level. So that means that when it floods, that's the level that the water rises to. 215, that's the state and FEMA's best guess at what the water level will rise to in a flood event. So it's 215 feet, 0.7. Now, what the state does is, through an abundance of caution, they add another foot to that, and they say that we want you as a builder, or you as a township, we want you to build anything in that, and this is what's called the flood hazard area design elevation. So we want you to design things to this elevation, but then they say, in order to meet the criteria for this application, we need you to be a foot above the design elevation. So effectively, 2 feet above where the flood waters could be, according to their best guess. I'm sorry, I misstated that. Please allow me to start over. The design elevation, because it does get confusing even for me, and I'm not a civil engineer, but I am well versed in the issues here, so I hope that I'm able to answer all of your questions and give you some clarity here. The FEMA and the state have a best guess that the actual flood waters would be at 214.7. The state's design elevation, where they'd like you to be, is 215.7, and then they add another foot on top of that to be at 216.7. So our civil engineer on our project team and the surveyor have gone out and looked at the site. So the site is at the roadways surrounding the area in need of redevelopment on Valley Road and Mercer Street in the rear. The roadway immediately in front of the site is at that 214. It's actually 214.56. So it's right there at that estimated flood level. And then it dips down as you get to the corner of Valley and Main, and you may have experienced flooding at that corner, at that intersection, and that's because the elevation at that corner is actually 213. So you would expect, based on if the state and FEMA are accurate and your observations, you expect to see about a foot of flooding in a serious event, in a serious flood event at that intersection. So this site is really at that point. Now, again, the state they add a foot on top of the 214 to get to 215, and then they require us as a builder to design things to be at another foot above. Now we can do that with the building, just like the cyclery did on the corner. We can make certain that all of the retail is above this flood elevation, the design standard. We will make certain that any residential units that we include here are on the second floor, well above the flood hazard elevation, the design elevation, and the state's buffer. The question becomes the access, because we can't move the roads. Nobody really wants us to move the roads, because if we raise any of these roads, it could create damming. It could create additional flooding down or upstream along the Passaic. It would create a host of, it could create a host of unforeseen repercussions that nobody really wants. So what we ask for this exception, and the exception really is for this access question. And along Mercer, if from the rear of the thermoplastic site on the north side of Valley, if you continue on Mercer toward Main Ave and then make a right going up Main Ave, you get to the 217 level where the state wants us to be. That's above where the state wants us to be, within 477 feet. So if you're driving by car, if you're walking, it's a 477-foot walk to get to what the state considers to be safe ground. Along Valley Road, it's a little further. It is about, it's 1,023 feet along Valley Road to get to what the state considers safe ground. And you wouldn't be traveling through the intersection, you'd be traveling away from the intersection, which goes down, as we discussed, as I mentioned, and you're nodding in concurrence, which I assume means you've observed this condition. You'd be traveling away. You'd be traveling east on Valley, that 1,000 feet approximately to the safe ground. So that's essentially, that's the nature of the request here. That's what the state's going to be looking at. They'll be looking at the surveying. They'll be looking at the argument that we've put on paper, and they'll be looking at the redevelopment plans that have been proposed, and that's it in a nutshell. So again, I'm here to answer any of your questions, and I'm happy to do so. And I thank you for allowing me to be here tonight.
Thank you for coming. Okay. Hang on. Anybody, Guy, do you have any questions, Matt?
Outside of you, your brother, and your father, are there any other investors in this project?
Yes. Our company, Elite Properties, we're based out of Watchung. We all live in Watchung by way of Scotch Plains. I was born and raised in Scotch Plains. My father is Amerigo Cecchio. He's been doing business. He doesn't allow me to say how long, but he's been building in this area for many, many years, and he's very experienced. My brother was trained or educated as a civil engineer, and he's our project engineer, project manager. I'm our in-house attorney, and we have another partner, Tom Powers, who was formerly a president of the Community Builders Association. He's fairly well known in this area for the homes that he builds. I refer to him as our master builder. He's on site supervising the construction in most cases.
And that's it?
The four of us, that's correct.
All right, that's the only 4 people that put money in this, correct?
Those are the only 4 people who would be investing in this.
Perfect.
That's right.
All right, but your new building in Watchung is really nice, by the way.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. And by way of background, and we submitted this with RFP, but we were redevelopers of downtown Fanwood. We were redevelopers. We've been designated, and we've redeveloped properties in Maplewood. We are a designated redeveloper in Warren Township. So we're familiar with redevelopment projects like this. This particular hardship exception is somewhat unique, but every one of these projects that we undertake, it always has unique circumstances. This type of condition exists in Bound Brook. You may be aware of the newer apartment building downtown Bound Brook on I think it's their Main Street.
That's right. I think it's called Meridian or something like
Meridian.
that.
They have they required the exact same exception. So the DEP saw fit to grant it in that case. A similar condition exists in downtown Cranford. If you've been to the new Starbucks or Pistosas in Cranford, those buildings you'll observe are, well, you step up into the Starbucks, very much like the cyclery. So you'll see a similar condition in those buildings in Cranford. And if you park, you'll note, if you park in Cranford particularly, because I don't think there's guest parking available, but I've been to the parking lot in Cranford, there are signs posted that say you're parking in a flood area. So be warned. Even if you're just visiting or a patron of one of these merchants, it's well posted, and that's a clear, those are the fingerprints of the DEP having granted this exception and saying, okay, we'll do this, and one of the conditions and one of the things that we're going to make certain of is that you post this for your visitors, for your patrons, so that they're all aware that this parking lot could flood.
I have two questions, actually.
Yes.
The development that's taking place relative, or the plans for whatever is going to be there relative to what's there now, are we actually asking to encumber anything beyond what's already built on, blacktopped?
So,
Or, you know, right, there's some buildings there already. They clearly are already in a floodplain. The parking lots are clearly already in a floodplain. Are we asking for anything above and beyond what's already in that?
I think what you're asking is a question that may be better suited for a civil engineer, but I'll say that in my opinion, much of that area needed redevelopment. There are buildings that are dilapidated, that are blighted. Much of it is impervious surface that does not allow rainwater to penetrate the ground. It all flows over the top. In my experience, and I know for a fact that at the time that these buildings were built and these properties were developed, there were much less stringent stormwater regulations in place. If we're able to move forward with this project and redevelop these parcels, we're going to be held to a much higher standard for stormwater, for runoff, for flood issues, and we're going to use modern mechanisms and techniques to control the stormwater and to make sure that it's managed in an effective way, certainly more effective than the designs of 50, 60, 70 years ago. So is that what you're asking?
Kind of where I was going.
Okay.
I mean, it's you know, it's one thing that you have stuff in harm's way that you're trying to clear out and put something better in its place, and it's another thing to take something that's already green and open, right? That's not been developed on and putting something in there. And my sense is that most everything there is either asphalted or built on. So, you know, anything that we're doing here is an improvement on that, and we're not going to be covering up any additional green area. The second question I had was, you had described the distances heading north on Main Ave and east on Valley Road, and I don't know exactly where those measure out to, but I would assume that the entrance is like you described, stepping up at the Starbucks, right? That there's going to be some walkway that's above the floodplain. Does that extend at any point outside of the floodplain area so that people would have the ability to get in and out without getting their feet wet? To high ground, if you will?
I can't answer that question today, but that's something that that would be it may be one of the conditions of the DEP's approval. I don't know. I don't know if it's feasible in this instance. I would say that raising the road isn't feasible for that 400 feet.
No, I'm not talking about raising the road, right? I'm talking about that you have a walkway in front of, you know, and let's just suppose it goes retail, residential, right? And you've got a set of shops, and you've got what amounts to an elevated sidewalk in front of it, right?
Right.
Does that extend to a point where they can get out to dry ground at the eastmost end? I don't know where
It does not. It would,
Okay.
that would have to extend across
Okay.
other property owners' property.
Okay, so you wouldn't quite get there, but
Right.
you'd be on your way uphill.
You'd be on your way uphill,
Okay.
certainly. That's right.
Jack, do you have any?
Just one thing,
Legal
Dave.
comments?
Thank you for revising the first draft agreement after our discussion yesterday with Brendan and Nancy and me. We did have one request at page 2, the last paragraph of visions and goals. We would like to remove the specific density information that's in there, just because we think that's premature. It'll be part of the redevelopment agreement, which will be done after public discussion. So, you know, we have no objection to your saying we'll create new retail space, you know, as well as residential units on the second floor, something like that. But if we could leave out the specific square footage and the specific number of residential units.
In a vacuum that didn't involve the DEP, I would say absolutely that wouldn't be a problem. I think this information may be relevant to their inquiry. That's why it's in there. They may want to know exactly how many people we're putting in this complex that we're requesting this exception for. So if we were to tell them, well, we're developing 4 apartments, it may be a different analysis than 400. So I actually think that this is somewhat material to the request.
If that's the case, I would just like to state on the record that since we're submitting this in the township's name as opposed to Elite's, that just state on the record that we're not approving these numbers from a zoning or redevelopment standpoint. It's for purposes of submitting this preliminary letter to DEP for the hardship waiver.
And I believe, Jack, and I appreciate your concerns, and I appreciate the clarification. We understand that. I was careful to say that this is Elite's proposal, that Elite is proposing.
Good point.
So we're that language in there, I do think gives the township the cover that you're looking for, but it still gives the DEP the information that it needs to really make an informed decision.
Right, thanks. That's a good point, and I think it is clear on the record now that, you know, that this is not approval of those numbers. We're just opening the door to DEP.
Thank you.
I'm a bit nervous about that because, I mean, we're, you know, as Jack pointed out, we are putting our name to this letter. And there's an inference here that we might condone, you know, and I don't know whether it's right, wrong, too big, too small, because we haven't talked about it. We haven't had any meaningful public discussions about the density level that we might want to put there. And if I add up these numbers, they are, you know, they are significantly denser than what was approved last week on the Tifa property as part of a COA agreement.
Yeah, the difference is the TIFA agreement is binding. This, and Jack, I think you've said it for the record, but it's worth repeating. And I appreciate what your clarification as well, that this is so the DEP understands. In fact, it might hurt the request in the sense that you've made it more dense than quite possibly will end up being in the redevelopment approval anyway. So as long as we're not committing to anything binding, I think it probably makes sense, just as you explained, to let the DEP know what is being considered. And I appreciate where you're coming from,
Yeah,
But I think with the caveats that are in the record tonight and also relying on Dave's statement that this is Elite's proposal, that, you know, they don't get any vested rights in these numbers as a result of this document. That's my opinion.
I mean, for me too, I think we're covered, and you know, with both of what's on the record now, and as Dave clarified, that it's Elite's proposal. So I'm fine with it. I see your concern, Cornell, but I just think that we're covered here.
Yeah, yeah, well, it's a township, right, it's a vote, so.
That's right.
You know, I still think you don't put your name on anything unless you want to stand behind it.
But all we're saying is we approve Elite's request, not that.
Well, we approve Elite's request for 139
No,
units.
we approve Elite's request to have the DEP review it. There's a big
For
difference.
139 units on 4 acres. I mean, it's a very explicit number. And, I mean, we just, you know, we grappled with negotiating COA down to 138 on 11 acres.
COA has nothing to do with it.
But that was the settlement.
No, I,
agreement.
I,
We-
well,
we were agreeing to those numbers.
I understand that.
And we're submitting
but-
it to the court for approval. This is a
But,
very
I mean,
different document.
we also do know the public outcry when the proposal originally came in at 220, right? And this number at a density per acre is higher than what the 220 was in Millington. And-
Yeah, but you know, again, we had differences there. It was right in the middle of an already populated area, and there were I think there were some, and still are, some infrastructure problems there. This is an area of blight. It's an eyesore in the town. We've all agreed on it. We've all talked about it, and you know, so that's why I mean I'm absolutely comfortable moving forward with the caveats that we have this evening.
Yeah, I'm not saying the numbers are right or wrong. I'm just nervous about committing to a number at this stage of the game without ever having had any type of public discussion around
if I
what
may,
numbers people would be comfortable with.
Arguably, the colors that they painted those Tifa buildings are blighted. So, I mean, that might constitute blight. Depends on your opinion, but you could, you know, reasonable minds might disagree. But this is very much a first step in the process.
Mm-hmm.
This would not, what we're asking the DEP to do here is an informal review of this document at this time. They won't give us a final approval until if and when we get through a land use board approval, so the DEP, we're looking for a gauge from them whether or not this is viable. This is the very first step in the process. They could just shut the whole thing down based on they don't feel that this is appropriate. Right. Based on what we've seen in towns like Cranford and Bound Brook, I think that it would be inappropriate for them to do that, but they may. So this is very much a preliminary, informal application. They will not give us a green light based on this. We will be continuing a dialogue with them as we negotiate a redevelopers agreement, as we, negotiate a redevelopment plan and move forward through the land use process. So this is not an end-all, be-all either. But I think at this stage, this is a complicated redevelopment area because it involves a number of individual sellers, and we're doing our best to engage them and have a dialogue with them, but without knowing whether we can do anything with the land is making it difficult. And we need to get this answer from the DEP sooner rather than later, but we're going to continue to have dialogues. We're going to continue to have dialogues, you know, Long Hill and us as Elite. We'll continue to have dialogues involving the DEP. This won't be shovel ready as a result of us submitting this to the DEP. This is just honestly a feeler, for lack of a better word. I wish we could get more definitive answer from the DEP, but we won't.
Well, let me just ask you another way. Are you potentially shooting yourself in the proverbial foot by asking, you know, to your point, possibly asking for a density that might be much higher than the township is willing to consider to begin with? Is there more probability if that number gets honed in a little bit better?
Well, again, time isn't on our side with some of these sellers, and I think that density is the township more willing to consider density or eminent domain. So, you know, it becomes a question of how this project requires a certain density in order to work economically, and the viability of it is contingent on a residential density. There are numerous cellars. There has to be an assemblage. There are sites that are 5 of the 7 are known to be contaminated. I would suspect that the other 2 are also contaminated within the redevelopment zone. So there's a cleanup bill that has to be foot. So there's the density is a dicey question. I didn't want to have to address it tonight, but you know, both respondents to the RFP included a residential component, and that's what's important to make this go. And the density is the driver. So we've had discussions with the redevelopment committee about the mass of the buildings, the height of the buildings, the look of the buildings, but we've remained adamant that density is important here to get the entire 4.4 acres redeveloped. Now, we can start looking at north side of Valley versus south side of Valley, and that's different, but on a per acre basis, I don't think it's going to change much.
But I think that's a discussion for another day.
It's, I mean,
Well, but, I mean, I just heard it's 139 or bust, quite honestly.
But we're not approving that number tonight.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but.
And you know, I think what it comes down to is, I mean, for as long as I've been on the committee, we've talked about that area, right? And what we'd like to do with it. We issued an RFP. We had plans for it where that would include mixed use, and there are there are obviously densities that require that are required to make it economically viable. And this is the first step in the process, and so I'm perfectly comfortable given what we have here tonight moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll vote, and I'll state for the record, under no circumstances am I agreeing to 4 units or 140. We're just simply voting on whether to send this request to the DEP. So, I mean, I'm perfectly comfortable calling for a vote.
Okay. Should I read it in, Jack?
Yes, please.
Resolution 17264, resolution supporting the application of Elite Properties is filing with NJDEP for a hardship waiver under the flood hazard area rules in connection with the Valley Road redevelopment area. Whereas the Township Committee, in accordance with the Planning Board's recommendation, adopted Resolution 16251 on August 17, 2016, designating lots 6, 31, 32 in Block 11514 and lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 in Block 10401 as a condemnation area in need of redevelopment pursuant to the redevelopment law. And whereas the Township Committee, after issuing a request for proposals, authorized the Township to enter into negotiations with Elite Properties to become the authorized developer for the property. And whereas pending adoption of the redevelopment plan and execution of the redevelopment agreement, Elite Properties, as part of its due diligence, is filing an application with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection for a hardship waiver under the NJDEP flood hazard area rules. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Long Hill in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, that the Township of Long Hill hereby supports the application of Elite Properties for a hardship waiver from the flood hazard area rules, and the mayor is authorized and directed to send a letter to the NJDEP supporting and consenting to the filing of that application. Moved by Mr. Pasurgia, and a second.
Second.
Committeeman Pasurgia.
This is a yes or no?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ray.
There's no maybe in this. Yes.
Mayor Schuler.
I'm going to vote no, only because I'm not willing to put my name onto the numbers.
And
But
Committeeman Dorsey, you
I
are
abstain.
abstaining, right?
Obviously.
otherwise, I would approve
All right,
what going on.
passes 2-1. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Parking
Deputy
permit.
Mayor Ray, were you taking a shot at me on that maybe bit?
No, I was just clarification.
Well, you did ask, is this a yes or a no, in all fairness? Yeah, you've done this before,
But you're
I
taking a
think.
shot.
But every vote was a yes or a no.
It's supposed to be, right?
Not in Jersey City.
All right, moving on. Parking permit fees. We had some discussion about this last week. I believe we had asked for some pricing on potential drainage project. That came in at 200,000, if memory serves.
Yes.
It's ballpark, 200,000.
Okay, so
Applying for
we're,
a grant for that?
we are
Did
hoping
pay
for a grant, but there's no guarantee for a grant. And what's our current balance?
288,000.
So if, on the off chance we don't get a grant and need to do the drainage project, we're gonna pull 200,000 out of the 288. That'll leave 88,000 in there. We only, this year, are only adding 10,000.
I was just gonna
It's
ask you,
about,
how
it's
much do
about
we add
10,000 a year by the time you're done with all the expenses, gets into the fund, so,
Really?
Is that all from the,
from parking permits, yes. Based on the accounting spreadsheet I saw from Len, there's charges going against the income. We generate like 100,000, but then there's
What kind of?
maintenance fees.
There,
But does it include paving, so therefore it's a one-off?
Not the annual ones, no. The annual ones are just administrative costs, maintenance costs, right? Lawn mowing, that, you know, there's a bunch of expenses that we incur. And for this year, it was $10,000 or $11,000. That was, I'll call it profit, but
No, but
the fund increased
on
by
the
11.
expense side, $90,000, I was a little bit surprised, so I was curious. I mean, none of that is for something that are one-off maintenance projects. You think it's just an annual $90,000 operating cost for the 3 parking lots? Sounds high, right?
Yes. That, according to the accounting for this past year, that's what it was. It was $100,000 cost. Correct?
that's what it says.
Yes.
It's made up of salaries, capital improvement,
What was
operating
that second
What
one?
was the capital?
capital improvement transfer to capital fund, $10,000.
Yeah, well, that's an example
Yeah,
of what I
we
mean.
must
That's a
have, that
one-off.
must have been, I don't know what that was, but
$30,000 operating expenses and $50,000 anticipated revenue in the 2010 budget.
the short version is you're going from 288 down to 200. We haven't seen an increase in the parking fees for 4 years, 5 years?
3 or 4 years, I believe.
4 years,
Well,
2015.
Okay, my
Since-
math is, as Brendan likes to point out, I'm from Jersey City. One for you, two for me, but. We have how much in the fund now?
200.
288.
288,
And the drainage was gonna cost how much?
200,
If we don't get the grant.
if we don't get a grant.
So that leaves 88.
Correct.
Right, 88, okay, I misunderstood you, so.
And that's the paving will come out of that.
Paving, I
No,
think, was
paving is
already
not.
allotted.
It's already in.
It's
Paving
already,
is
it's already been moved
appropriate.
out to capital.
Is there a waiting list for those spots?
In Gillette, there is, yeah.
And we open up?
Gillette sells out. Sterling still out? Sell out?
No, Sterling, no.
Gillette is really the only one
Yeah.
that sells out.
Obviously, two less stuff. Is there, when we offer it, out-of-town people can get it too?
Yeah, anyone can come get it.
We have to.
We have
Under the
to.
New Jersey Transit
And we
lease.
can't charge a separate rate either because we don't own the parking lot. New Jersey Transit owns it. We administer it.
All right.
I mean, you know, I park there, so I'm charging myself more, but, I mean, we haven't, you know, like I said, we haven't seen an increase in 4 years. I'd be nervous about, we're taking greater than 2/3 potentially out of the fund. You don't make that up in a year. I'd say.
The only thing I will say is, you know, unless you raise these rates.
No, well, but-
Like 3 times,
No.
you're not really generating that much income anyway. Right, if you're only generating,
No, but if you do it every year.
what did you have in mind?
I had $5. Or $10. I mean, I wasn't thinking anything, you know. We're talking about parking rates.
Nominal.
And I think we saw some data today that said we've only raised
In,
the parking fees 9% over 9 years, or I don't even know what it was. Does
Yeah.
that sound right? 10% over 9 years?
10% in 9 years.
10% in 9
And that hasn't even kept up with inflation, so.
I don't think it should be raised. I think there's sufficient funds in the parking fund. It doesn't seem to be.
Well, you did, to be fair, Bruce, you didn't hear the first part. The
Okay.
drainage is gonna cost $200,000.
we have 288 now. If we don't get a grant, we're gonna empty out 200. So you're talking about taking more than 2/3 of the fund in one shot.
That's the only thing that gives me pause.
Either way, you know, the $10, like, is, you know, it's not gonna make a break, it's just a step towards, but
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the mayor, $10, and we'll bring the rate increase to 10% over 11 years.
So a $10 increase, is that what you're proposing? Someone proposing?
point of facts, Dennis?
Every time the temporary parking thing comes up year after year, I make the same comment, and I caution you. At Millington, a $220 a year permit works out to about $20 a month. And so if you go to New York more than 5 times a month, you might as well buy a monthly permit. And the other 15 days that you're not using it, you are holding that slot out from somebody else who would rather buy it and use it every day. If you raise it to $10, then the break point becomes only twice a month to New York. You are better off buying a monthly ticket and blocking that space on the 18 days that you don't use it, which is why I suggested it is not a good idea to put the temporary rate or the daily rate at $10.
Not,
We weren't talking about.
no, we weren't talking
temporary
about daily
we were
rate,
talking
Dennis.
about
We were just talking about
increase.
raising the monthly,
The monthly to,
The monthly pay.
we were just talking about the monthly
I'm
rates.
sorry, I heard you say $10, and that's...
Raising the month, sorry,
Yearly pay.
sorry,
It
I
sounds so
apologize. The
small in
yearly,
a month, that-
raising the yearly price by $10.
Oh, I'm sorry, I answered the wrong question. Please forgive me.
That's all right, Dennis.
There's the right answer.
Thank you.
so I think we should raise the daily to $10. No.
So,
I'll make a motion to raise each of the 3 rates $10.
Including the daily rate?
No, that's the night, we'll discuss that now.
Second.
Committeeman Dorsey.
Yes.
Committeeman Maringo.
No.
Committeeman Paserchia.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ray.
Yes.
Mayor Schuler.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, solicitation ordinance language. 2 meetings ago, or maybe 3 meetings ago, we had someone come in with some complaints about people showing up at later hours than they would like. We had done some research, and Jack, you have some background for us on the legality of changing it?
Yeah, as I recalled, we have liberalized our ordinance over the years to respond to federal court cases, which always go in the other direction. And in fact, there is a federal court case that involved Edison Township, and they had a 7 o'clock ending time, and the court held that was unconstitutional, and they responded to all the arguments that one would make in favor of such an earlier time limit. They said there was no correlation between the ordinance and crime prevention. 2, it is difficult to sustain a conclusion that the interest of some residents in privacy should overcome the important First Amendment rights of door-to-door canvassers and solicitors. I'm not writing this, I'm just reading it. And 3, the municipal ordinance unconstitutionally restricted plaintiffs' right to conduct door-to-door soliciting and canvassing because there are no alternative channels of communication that adequately serve their important First Amendment rights. So, I'm sorry to say, I don't think we can change the 9 o'clock end time without inviting a lawsuit, because most of these groups that canvass at these hours are public interest groups that love nothing more than bringing a constitutional challenge to an ordinance.
Sigh.
Lawyers.
So what is the current time?
9 o'clock
9 o'clock on Sunday,
every day.
every day. See, and I would propose that we reduce it on Sunday to 5 o'clock.
But is it the same problem, the legal challenge from one of these?
One thing the courts don't care about anymore is Sunday.
Sundays.
Oh, jeez.
Really. I mean, it used to be, a day of rest, there used to be blue laws, but, those have all been thrown out because you can't make a distinction between Sunday and...
See, I would think that we would reduce every day to 7 and Sundays to 5 o'clock.
And I don't disagree with you, I think it is,
But we've
it
seen
is a
that
nuisance.
the federal court ruled that 7 is no good.
And the most telling reason for their conclusion was point 2, that it's difficult to sustain a conclusion that the interest of some residents in privacy should overcome the important First Amendment rights of door-to-door canvassers and solicitors. Now some towns, and we've discussed it in the past, have no-knock ordinances, where we can adopt an ordinance that says people can put up a sign on their front door that says no canvassers or solicitors. And if they knock in violation of that, they're,
So we
they
can,
could be,
we can
they
have,
could be fined.
we can put one of them on the books?
Yes, and those are permitted if you want to go in that direction.
I don't understand. So the town can't violate someone's First Amendment rights, but an individual can?
Well, it's public and private.
It's the right of privacy versus the right of First Amendment. Like I said, I'm not writing this, I'm just
Yeah, but it's
conveying
one of
it.
your brothers and sisters that wrote
But,
this.
but I think we can, I'd be, if we can't do I know I got phone calls whenever we had the discussion about the canvassers, and people residents were really upset about it. And so if we can't do it that week, I would actually have moved up to 4 o'clock every day. Maybe a no-knock ordinance is the way to go. It
I think it's a safer way to go and
Yeah.
should accomplish what we're trying to accomplish.
To do what? To let people put up? no
Let people put up a
solicitation?
no. I mean,
No solicitation sign.
See, I'm really troubled by this, but we can't fight the Supreme Court.
It was the federal court, it wasn't
Well,
the
federal-
Supreme Court.
Same
but-
difference, right? Because then it can get appealed.
But it was based on
You
our
can, it's
Supreme
just too
Court.
expensive.
And like I said, they have ready armies of volunteer lawyers,
Yeah.
more than happy to challenge
Yeah, these
a
are those groups
municipality.
that look and they just keep pushing till they find some activist lawsuit that they can put in.
Correct.
I don't know what to say.
Want me to get you some sample no-knock ordinances, and we can just discuss them
We
next
can
time?
discuss them, yeah,
And
right?
see whether you want to pursue it?
Yep.
What happens if we do put it in place and somebody challenges it? Can we just cry uncle and immediately,
Or violates it. What happens if they violate?
Yeah, but right now.
No, what I'm saying is if
knowingly
we
doing
do it-
something that's illegal, so it's inviting problems. I don't know what you're talking about.
As I recall, this Edison Township case actually involved a conviction in municipal court of violating the ordinance. And then they took that to the federal court and said, we can't be convicted
could we
of
put in
this.
the ordinance if there's any problem,
We'll fold?
we'll offer up Brendan?
Or just will fold.
Right, my point is if it doesn't cost anything, we'll just fold.
But the problem is if they sue us for
will.
a civil rights violation, they'll seek damages
Yeah,
and
it will
even if
cost
we
us
win
something.
ultimately, it's gonna cost a fortune to.
The court.
Look for minutes of this meeting when we should.
Hang on, the court
video.
said 7 was no good. Did they give a time frame?
9. It was 9
They
in
did-
that case,
Okay, so
yes.
they explicitly stated
Yes.
federal court explicitly stated 9 o'clock.
Boggles
They
the
made-
mind.
They made no distinction between Saturday and Sunday or.
Correct.
Towns like us, and we're not an exception. We have 20% of our residents are seniors. They don't need people knocking on their door at 9 o'clock. In fact, the first
I
person
agree.
who contacted me was on behalf of a senior that was petrified because somebody was knocking on their door at 9 o'clock at night. Heck, I don't like people knocking on my door at 9 o'clock at night. I'm saying, what the heck?
I
They
agree.
came to my door last Sunday. The dogs go crazy, I gotta go.
So why don't we look into the no-knock?
Yep.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
maybe
I think
some
it's worth
type of
pursuing.
public awareness campaign so that people can take advantage of the no-knock ordinance.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll get you some samples and we'll talk about it
Thank you,
next
Jack.
time.
Great.
Thanks.
All right, that's all we can do.
All right, temporary overnight parking on township property. Nancy,
Right.
can you give us some background, please?
Okay, this is the annual tree trimming process that JCP&L does. This year, well, I guess every year they use Nelson Tree Service. So Nelson Tree Service will be around town for a period of about 4 to 6 weeks, trimming trees that interfere with the wires. They have asked us if they could park 6 to 7 bucket trucks during the overnight and on the weekends at Sterling Lake. And then the employees would come with their personal cars, leave their cars, take the trucks, and do their work during the day, put them back there at night. We have an ordinance that says no parking on when the parks are closed. So they're asking for your permission, and they would sign a hold harmless and give us a certificate of insurance, and they are willing to help us with some of our dead trees, working with Tom Sweeney.
That sounds fine.
So they'll coordinate with Tom Sweeney on the dead trees that might be?
Yes.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah.
Jack, we're good.
Did you check with
Yeah, I'm fine with that,
Mrs.
yes.
Scanlon?
Lisa brought it to me, yeah. Lisa and Tom brought it to me together.
And all we need is a hold harmless agreement, and we're good?
Yes.
Yep, we're ready. We'll
Sounds
have
good.
that before they start.
Hey, listen, that's fine, they're doing us a service in general, so, and if they're helping Tom out, all the better for it. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. American Legion, property and land disposition?
I'll do the
Oh, go ahead.
property. I'll do the property one. There are some items that the American Legion has left behind, including a pool table, flat screen TV, a projector TV, a large stove, and a refrigerator, and I believe some kitchen items and maybe some miscellaneous other things. The Elks would like to know what you want them to do with them. They consider them to be the township's property since they were left there. So you need to discuss your options, whether you want to auction them off, whether you want to let the Elks auction them off. I don't know if you want to contact American Legion. I mean, they, I guess, left them there.
Well, they should have first.
Yes,
They
yes.
paid for
We
them,
should
right?
contact them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll talk to them.
You have a special relationship with
We have a
them.
line of communication.
You know,
What was it, a
somehow I,
stove, TV?
Well, whatever's inside the
Right,
building,
pool
basically.
table, couple
Chairs,
TVs,
I mean, I'm sure there's,
refrigerator.
you know, I feel like John Belushi in Animal House, they, you know, stand outside, they took the bar, they took the whole bar.
So, yeah, there is a bar there too, but I think that's attached. So the thing is, there's a bit of a time constraint because I guess they want to get moving and maybe they need to get in there. I don't know, Jack, maybe you know what the time frame is.
Well, sooner the better. I don't think we
Right.
have an absolute deadline, but
So I don't know if you want to talk about if the American Legion says they don't want it, what you want to do. If you want to talk about that
I
now.
should be able to email you an answer probably in the next 12 hours.
Well, no, but I
Well,
mean, if you all want to decide what you want to do, if
Oh.
they say they don't want it.
I think if it has a value of over 1,500, I think's the number, Debbie, then it has to be publicly auctioned off. If it's less than that, we can just dispose of it.
collectively or individually?
Collectively, yeah, which is kind of a silly way to do it.
Is it first come, first, you know, whoever gets there first can take
Do,
it?
Well, if we have an auction, you could sell the TV for $5. I don't know whether it works or,
the
How many
Elks is-
items? How many items are we talking about?
they weren't really sure.
Well, there's at least 6.
Whatever was in, whatever was
Right,
in.
but I don't think those 6 items are going to total
I
1,500.
doubt it.
It's just an industrial stove, a big refrigerator. If they work,
Oh, maybe
have
they do.
value.
Probably not, though.
No, they're years and years old.
All right, I'll see what they want. I'll get an email to you guys later.
Would the Elks be able to run an auction and then donate back to the American Legion? Just to keep us out of it?
Are they allowed to?
Well, it's our property at this point.
It's our property, we have to give it to somebody.
You
Well,
could
we-
give it to the Elks.
Yeah, we could give it
Yeah.
to the Elks, because but I don't think they want it, do they?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they want it or
Yeah.
not. They just want to know what you want
I
to
think-
do with it because they don't own it.
Because
You
the
know what?
refrigerator, they may have it.
I think we're hearing that we might want it, that the Elks might want it. The Elks might want it.
Oh,
So, there you go.
yeah.
That's it.
Cheers.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
I guess we better find out first if the Legion
I'll
wants.
double
Yeah.
check.
Yeah.
with the Legion.
Assuming they don't,
Yeah,
They don't.
Legion has first
Then we'll-
dibs and.
but we should do it formally by motion.
Right.
You know, donating it to the Elks. That no doubt has a value of less than $1,500. The Elks is a nonprofit charitable organization. Will donate whatever personal.
I'd make a motion that any items left in the American Legion that are unwanted by the American Legion that we donate to the Elks.
Second, well done.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Thank you.
There's a second part to this.
Yes.
The main,
Right.
the main American Legion lot with the building reverted to us, although I would like them to give us a quitclaim deed, just so the title's clear in the future. But they also want to give the town the other lot that they own that they got from Vito Armenti.
It's the land in the back.
In the
behind
back.
Parking lot over the creek, or the
Right.
state ditch, as it's known as earlier.
So I don't know whether the town has any interest
Do
in
we-
taking it. You don't have to decide tonight, I don't think, but
Do we don't, since it's 501c, we don't currently collect any tax revenue, right? It's currently an exempt property, so it doesn't.
Correct.
If we take ownership of it, it doesn't change anything, right?
So we might as well get quitclaim deeds for both of them.
They just wanted like,
Is that a motion?
well, we'll formally approve if Matt can go back to his
Okay.
father and get us.
yeah, they basically, they want officially for the town to take over the property.
Okay.
So
Right.
It's a matter of what the process is, and things got stalled when Neil left, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's okay with them, I can prepare the deeds.
That's
Just let me
fine.
know.
I'll check with deeds and personal property.
And okay, so we're all good with that
Yeah.
agreement? Okay.
Okay. So then we'll have a resolution at the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. Old business. I'll start on my left since I did liaisons on the right.
You okay, Bruce? All right, I just wanted to give a quick update on the wastewater/sewer referendum. Some residents have asked very good questions. Some residents have taken it upon themselves to meet, and I commend anybody who's done that, because I think this is an important issue, and as we have said from the beginning, an informed decision is what this committee and what this township should want. One of the questions that was brought to me directly is, now that I realize the outstanding debt would be paid, will the township committee just go out and bond again and therefore just build up that debt? And the answer to that question is, this committee and the committees just in the recent past have made an effort to become debt-free if we could. But Jack, I think you've explained many times, there's nothing we can do to bind the future committee.
That's right.
But I would point out to anybody else who has that same question, understand, to bond, it takes 4 people, 4 of the 5. So if you don't like the direction that any committee, this committee or a future committee is going in terms of what it is borrowing money for, you have a voice. So I would stick with the good news. We have 13 million roughly, I know it says 14, but say, and if the sale goes through, we would have 2 or 3 million worth of debt, and then you get to voice your opinion. Another question that came up was, if the sale goes through, what about the ordinance that's going to force residents to connect to the sewer once the ban is lifted? I think it's important to say that it actually does. That ordinance has been in place, and Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, it was codified in 1983.
Yes.
I mean, there are some exceptions that exist, but whether the sewer system is sold or not, that ordinance exists, and it has existed for 34 years, so it's very important to understand that. Nothing that you're going to do as a voter is going to change that. I mean, an ordinance can be changed, but it has nothing to do with this referendum. Another question was asked. Municipalities that have come to regret selling their water infrastructure. The answer to that is none related to NJ American Water. And I confirmed with management there. None, as far as I know, anywhere in the state. If there are, please let me know. I think it's important to point out that there's a difference between a sale and then ownership of a private company or by a private company, and what is a contract operation like Bayonne, because I know a lot of people have brought up Bayonne. The situation in Bayonne has nothing to do with what is being put on referendum in November. The BPU that is supposed to guard against increases, I would say it's not supposed to, it does. And keep in mind, the BPU does that in coordination with the Rate Council, which is mandated to protect rate payers. So, but to put numbers to that, NJ American Water has averaged roughly a 2% increase per annum for the past 20 years. I know it gets a lot of headlines, they're asking for X. Keep in mind, what they ask for is, generally speaking, for 3 years. So whatever ends up happening is for 3 years. And like any poker player, in negotiation, you ask for more than you typically get. So the average approved rate increase by BPU under the aegis of the Rate Council for the past 20 years has been roughly 20% on the water side. Another question that was asked, and these are things that should come out in the next 4 town hall meetings. I implore, and I said this right from the beginning, please, please, please come to these meetings. It doesn't do any good if questions are asked and answered in smaller groups. We are happy to meet with smaller groups. The mayor and I have done that several times. In absence of one of us, another one will be happy to go to smaller groups. We've met with homeowners associations. We've met at the senior center. We're going to meet with a couple of other groups. Any group that wants us to come in, with or without NJ American Water, we're happy to do so. Another question that was asked about federal and state grants. The answer to that question is they are tough to come by. They are very time-consuming to apply, and they come with restrictions that make it difficult to implement exactly what it is you are trying to do. The other thing about low-interest loans are available through NJEIT. Actually, this committee is very familiar with that. I think 2 of the $4 million or $4.5 million that are outstanding are in fact NJEIT loans, which is the New Jersey Environmental Infrastructure Trust. It's worth noting that water purveyors, AKA companies like NJ American Water, are also eligible to apply for these grants. But I think people need to understand, and Mayor has explained this on numerous occasions, you still have to pay this money back. It's exactly how this country got in trouble with low-interest loans in the mortgage industry. It's exactly how we are in trouble now regarding student loans. It's not like it's free. You have to pay it back. So we can do it by bonding and maybe lessen the blow about raising rates. But ultimately, instead of having $4.5 million outstanding, you'll have 30. So just keep that in mind. Regional authority, that was another question that was brought up. It's the question you have to ask yourself, who's going to want to invest significant capital into our system? It's like you own a car, like the mayor has to replace his engine.
Thanks.
But he's going to ask somebody to pay book value for it. There's not many people that are going to be foolish enough. We know it's $28 million over the next 20 years. The very people, the very engineering firm, one of the most respected engineering firms in the state, that firm, which said to us the book value on the wastewater system is $24.9 million, is also the group, and we respect them, that has said we have to put 28 or 26, what is it, 26? 26 $26 million into the system over the next 20 years of what we know exists.
In addition to what we do today.
Right. So, I mean, I don't want to belabor these points too much. We're going to have many more meetings. But these questions were asked in writing in the echoes, so I wanted to make sure on the record we got those answers out to the person who was asking. I applaud anybody who has doubts, who has, concerns. These are questions that must be asked and must be answered. The most important thing to do right now is to make an informed decision and not one based on emotion. So, any questions you have, there are 4 meetings coming up. They're on the website. They're on Long Hill TV. Dennis, I believe it's already up there.
Yep.
I think it's going to be on the website certainly by tomorrow.
It is.
There are
It's there
4
now.
more, it's already there. Thank you, Nancy. There were 4 more town hall meetings. There's 2 more of township committee meetings. The mayor and I, and maybe one of the other councilmen in absence, because I don't want Jack to have a breakout in hives that there's 3 committee men in the same meeting. There will be 2 of us at meetings with individual groups. We're meeting with the seniors. We're meeting with some school moms, I think, that Bruce set up. We're willing to meet with any group that wants us to come in. I think it's probably more educational if NJ American Water representatives are there, but if the group does not want them there, they'd rather hear directly from their elected officials, that's fine too. So, any other questions? And on NJ American, one second, Gary. On NJ American Water, I think it's longhillsewerfax.com, or is it .com? Dot something.
Let me look.
You can ask a question to them, and I believe they get back to you at most 24 hours, but more often sooner. They've already received a couple of 100 questions that have been asked and answered. So residents, go on that site,
Yes.
ask your question.
It is longhillsewerfax.com, and I will just add that that is New Jersey American Water, and New Jersey American is the one that is responding.
That is a true
So
statement.
if you're looking for an answer from us, email us.
we have
Email us
emails.
directly, through the township website. If you have any questions for NJ American, you can go to longhillsewerfax.com.
That is a correct statement. So that's it in a nutshell.
That was a nutshell.
That was some nutshell.
That's a very big
That was
nutshell.
That was a coconut shell.
Give us a few, Gary.
I didn't think I had gone too long, because usually when I go too long, Matt bangs his head on the table, so I figured I had another minute or so.
Old business?
I thought Gary was.
Well, let's open up the public after we get through our business, old business, new business.
Nothing. No new business.
Nothing.
No.
Do you have any old business?
I did want to bring up the Rosie,
Rosie.
however you want to say it.
Rosie, we've been corrected, it's Rosie.
Right, it was brought up at the last meeting about how we would remove properties from the inventory.
Yes.
And there is a whole process, there's a section in DEP that handles that. They have a procedure, there's actually a part of the administrative code dedicated directly to that. There is a property, I think, that was in question that has a pump station on it. And the DEP says that that would probably be considered an error and would be able to be handled by an amendment, which would be able to be done probably administratively. But if there were parkland, if there was to be parkland that they want to take off, or vacant space, that would probably be required to divert more property. A diversion would probably be required. So there is a whole process, there's a whole, like I said, a whole section of the administrative code that addresses this. If, I didn't know what you wanted to do, if you have specific properties that you want us to look at, and there is a woman who we've been given a contact for at the division, department, and I could contact her. I could work with Paul. I don't know what you.
What was the
So-
what property were we talking?
Well, the issue at, well, I think it's Oaks Road was one of them, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much been resolved.
Okay, but there were others, right? And the issue, as I understand it, is that at some point in the past, someone went and listed every open piece of open space property that the township owns, whether or not it was acquired through Green Acres.
But you're supposed to include all properties that are used for open space or recreational purposes, but some of those properties still could have been excluded, that they were acquired for other purposes, or it was anticipated they'd be used for other purposes. But once they're on there, it's difficult to get some of them off.
Right. So, sometime past, for whatever reason, we believe there are some properties that probably shouldn't have been listed on the Rosie.
Those without structures, though, like I think the Marsville Field across from that, that's where that pump station is, I think. That must have been what we were referring to.
Probably, I'm not sure.
Well,
But
I
there are a whole
think,
bunch.
so we were talking about the one of them is I believe the area between Railroad Ave and the train tracks.
Right.
Right, that's on the Rosie.
But it's paved.
No, between the pavement
And the tracks.
and the tracks.
Most of
There's
it's
a section
probably-
of woodland, 30 feet.
Yeah.
Right, that's on the Rosie for whatever reason, wasn't, it used to be part of the NJ Transit right-of-way, and then it somehow got given to us, and then somehow got onto the Rosie. And now, because it's on the Rosie,
Yeah, and the
our
problem
hands are
with that,
tied behind
If
our
you do a
back.
diversion, you have to have an
Well,
environmental cleanup.
No, the diversion requires that you give them other property somewhere else.
And not on a one-to-one basis.
Right, like,
Like
we're
across the
familiar
street,
with
right?
the
Yes, we know that
diversion
well.
rules. 2-to-1, double the
20 to
value,
1.
And there's an expense to that.
Yes.
and there's an expense. So I think the question is,
Well, we should review all the properties to see if there's any administrative exceptions first.
right,
Well,
Right.
Jack had made a suggestion that maybe the Open Space Advisory Committee would want to look through the properties and see if they deem some that shouldn't be on there. I don't know how you feel about that. I believe that the inventory was put together primarily by the engineer and the rec director for rec and open space.
no, but some of these,
Yeah.
like that particular property came, whatever it was, 20 years ago or something, right? It wound up on the-
I mean,
But like I said, even, there are two categories of properties that are encumbered with Green Acres restrictions and are supposed to be on the Rosie, funded and unfunded. So for instance, once you take Green Acres funds, every park in town, every ball field becomes subject to Green Acres restrictions. The problem is they put properties that weren't used for recreation or open space. But Green Acres has a very expansive definition of open space too. They say, well, it's preservation of open space. You know, it's not, doesn't have to be intended for that purpose. So that was one of the arguments they were making on Oaks Road. We were saved on Oaks Road because the Rosie actually had a reference to the right-of-way.
Anybody want to do anything about this, or just let it ride?
I mean, I agree. We should look at the administrative part of it.
Well, I think those are
Right,
the easy,
right.
those are the
Those are
easy
the
ones,
easy
right?
ones.
Is there anything,
And
let's start with that.
And then maybe I mean, if you want me to take this to the Open Space Committee, I can, and have them look through it and determine if there are any that we might want to bring back for consideration.
I would suggest we have Paul take a look at the list first and just give us his opinion.
Okay, yep, that would be, Yeah.
Okay with that?
Yep.
Good?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks.
In the overall scheme of things, not one of his highest priorities, I'm guessing, or so, kind of like background for.
Especially as
My
he
guess.
recovers,
Yeah.
as he recovers.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
he's,
I could give him something to do.
he's gonna be out with
Laid
his
up.
leg up and all of that stuff,
So just on Oaks Road, Jack,
Yes.
are we allowed to pave? Was that resolved?
Within the 20 feet.
Within 20 feet?
Because the property, you know, as you know, I found the old deeds that Russ White had donated to the township for
Okay.
open space, so that was clearly properly on the Rosie.
Yeah.
But on the Rosie, or on the Rosie, they actually put subject to a 20-foot
Okay.
right away.
Right away.
And on the tax map, it's got the same thing. So based on that, they said they don't count it as part of, so Paul's now working with them on the drainage aspect of it. But it looks like we'll be able to pave the 20 feet and put
Okay.
drainage within the
And
20
drainage.
feet as well.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Any other old business? New business?
I have two things. One, we'd obviously not do it tonight, but if we can revisit the conversation at a later date about the volunteer use of the motor pool. I mean, volunteer meaning non-township employees, that people aren't getting paid by the town. The way the ordinance is written now, basically it applies to township employees using cars that the town either insures or owns or provides gas for. And then the second issue would be the conservation easement. I asked Dennis about this earlier last week. that conservation use that ran like basically along the power line between Valley Road and the power line that goes, I guess probably Warren Avenue all the way down behind Primavera towards Walgreens. And I thought our recommendation was to nix it because we didn't need it anymore. But according to Dennis, that never got done by the powers that be on the other boards.
So what do you suggest we do?
I don't know what we can do, but at least get it moving. 'Cause I thought we all agreed that at some meeting almost a year ago that
a year ago.
that the conservation easement that it wasn't necessary anymore, and then we referred it out somewhere and it just died down like
Sorry,
everything else.
conservation easement, or is this the easement for that one property at the end of the road?
It's a conservation easement.
Yeah, it's
right
like a
behind-
line that runs almost along the power line between Valley Road and the power line from
Yeah.
maybe like Warren Avenue this way towards Walgreens.
And it goes behind the sports store?
And the car wash.
Yeah.
Sports store, car wash, probably goes obviously behind the liquor store,
Yeah,
Bodega.
yeah, we
Yeah.
talked about this.
And I know that the owner, I remember, came in front of the planning board, and I think the planning board at the time was pretty much in favour of it. And I don't know whether it then went to the master plan committee to do something, but
When you
it
say the
seems-
owner,
Dennis-
this
Dennis has
was
background
that
on
one property that,
Not one, it's basically a strip of land that encumbers a
no,
lot
I
of properties.
remember, I mean, maybe I wasn't at the meeting you guys are talking about. I remember about the one where we reverted the easement or something back to the property owner behind on that road, right? Remember he was
That might have been
encroaching.
planning.
Well,
but
we've allowed-
it was a right of way. It was
We've
a right
allowed,
of way, and we
we've allowed
reverted.
certain property owners to encroach into easements. I think one had a pool that he said was built inadvertently in and didn't get near the sewer pipe. We've had several like that, but I don't recall ever releasing an easement.
No, we haven't, but we discussed that we were in favor of it, it just, nothing ever happened. I don't know when the planning board,
Well,
Dennis can obviously fill
Dennis-
us in.
Yeah, if anyone, before Dennis
Yeah,
starts, if anyone can do it, it'd have to be the township committee, because the township committee is, the township owns the easement. I mean, there's actually a case that says you have to go to court to get them discharged, but I think if you did it,
Just to
unless
be,
somebody challenged it, you'd be okay.
just to be clear here, are we talking about an easement or a zone?
Dennis can clear it up, whatever it
it's a
is.
zone.
It's a swatch of land.
A
that just
conservation
runs along the
zone.
back.
I think it's a zone.
It's a zone.
Oh, so
It's-
maybe it is a zone.
It's a
Sorry,
conservation
that's-
zone.
Conservation, oh, that's
Yeah,
all
it's a
different issue.
Yeah, whatever it's
conservation zone.
Okay, let me address the second issue first, and that is the right-of-way. We, some months ago, we gave back the Mercer Street extension west of,
We vacated it.
which, yeah, but that is not a part of this problem.
No, that's a
This
street
specific problem is that there are 3 lots, the Elks Club, the car wash, and the vacant lot next to Primavera, which extend back as far as the power line, but the 1996 master plan carved off the rear portions of those lots and put them into the conservation zone. The reason for splitting the lot between 2 zones was that we wanted to protect the back of the lot, which is wetland, from being developed. And that was okay 20 years ago, but we now have so many wetland regulations that the wetland regulations themselves prevent building back there, and we don't need to have the lot split between 2 zones. The problem with splitting a lot between 2 zones is that when you go to do the calculations on coverage and so on, you wind up with an apples and kumquats situation trying to do the math. So it is the intention of the master plan, the land use element, to dissolve the split lots and make the lot entirely its frontage zone. In other words, these lots are in the BD, in the front on Valley Road, and we'll just extend the BD zone all the way to the back of the lot. There are 60 of these in town. About half of them are on Valley Road, north and south of Valley Road, extending toward Berners. There's a bunch of them on Myersville Road, north and south, where we've, again, carved off the back of the lot and said you can't develop back there, but those are unnecessary. It is a mapping nuisance to try to map these, because the ordinance states that if you split a lot between 2 zones, you have to show the exact measurements of the split. We haven't done that ever. we're in violation of our own ordinance on our zoning map. And the easier way, rather than go out and survey these 60 lots, is to simply dissolve the split. The most egregious split lot in town, believe it or not, is St. Vincent's, where there is a zone boundary running right through the schoolhouse, north to south, between the R4 and the R3 zone. I have no idea how it got there, but we're going to get rid of that too. Not that I expect that St. Vincent's is ever going to need any zoning relief, but this is simply a nuisance issue. What can be done about it? Well, when the master plan land use element is adopted by the planning board, then it'll be referred to the township committee for a change to the zoning map to conform, and that should take somewhere between 2 weeks and 20 years.
And as a practical matter, although it's just done by ordinance, we have to wait for the amendment to the housing, or to the land use element, because if we don't, we have to give notice to every property owner within 200 feet of the changed boundary delineation.
So we really can't do anything until they act.
But if it's a result of an amendment to the master plan, then we don't have to give that notice, so we really...
Now, for those of you who are curious, there will be a presentation on dissolving split lots from the master plan committee to the planning board at the planning board's meeting 2 weeks from now, 13 days from now. And if you are a member of the planning board, you're certainly welcome to come and enjoy that presentation. If you're not a member of the planning board, you can watch it on television. But we'll go through, in that presentation, we will go through all the 60 elements, or 60 lots that are involved, and explain why it's unnecessary to continue this charade.
Wouldn't a more productive use of time be actually doing it instead of making presentations about it?
Excuse me?
Wouldn't a more productive use of time be actually working on the master plan instead of making presentations about it?
I am not in charge of the master plan committee, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I do what I'm told, and I have the presentation in hand. The intention of putting that in the presentation on split lots, and farmlands will be in that meeting too, is to familiarize the planning board members with global issues which affect more than one zone, so that when we get to the actual element and we look at each individual zone, some of the generic stuff like split lots will already have been covered. And so this is part of the education process, Matt, and God knows we need more of it.
I'm sure. Well, what are they doing it lot by lot or foot by foot? How long has this been going on for?
Well, we've done, how many presentations have you given for different components?
I've given 3 so far in March and April on various generic elements, and there's 2 more to go. And then we might be in a position to bring the land use element to the planning board for a public hearing. And once we get that done, then we might be in a position to bring the other elements to the planning board for adoption. And we might actually get the 2016 master plan finished sometime soon.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis.
And
Dennis,
thank you for your
Cheers.
effort. Actually, I have a question about that, Jack, and maybe this might be a question better served for Brett. If there is a rezoning of the properties from conservation to an R zone, is that going to have a tax impact?
Probably not, because as Dennis said, the back is not buildable anyway, so it's really not going to affect the value of the properties.
Well, but right now, the computation, because it's conservation, is explicitly excluded from the lot coverage calculation. If you leave it and get rid of it, it becomes part of it, right?
Yeah, but it's a practical matter.
Okay.
Maybe they're still subject to setback requirements and things like that, so.
Okay.
Mayor, can I just address the vehicle use?
Sure.
We talked about that based on your email.
Yes.
And so when we were going over the agenda, I had suggested that because I'm in the process of redoing the personnel policy, and our vehicle usage policy that we have in there is a little bit weak, that maybe it should be part of that rather than just a Band-Aid, just.
No, that's fine, as long as it applies to volunteers as well as employees, I don't care, that's fine by me.
Okay, I mean, you know, it'll be a process and you all have to vote on it, so you'll see it as it goes along.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Nancy, and, you know, one of Nancy's tasks, maybe not the first one, but one of the earlier ones, is to actually redo the entire policies and procedures guide. So I think it would be good just to have a fresh book rather than a page insert.
That's fine.
Oh, it needs a reworking.
Yes, yes, it does. Any other new business? Okay, announcements, and the list is long and distinguished today. October 28th, another reminder, Friends of the Library Shredding Fundraiser, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Any questions, email longhillfol@gmail.com. October 1st, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. is the Antique Car Show. That's at the hotel,
Correct.
correct? Long Hill Senior Center Rummage Sale, October 14th, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and October 15th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They are collecting items until October 4th. Please call 908-626-1101. Friends of the Library Trivia Night is October 14th from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. The doors open at 6. It's $10 per person with a maximum of 6 people per team. So if you think you're good at trivia, show up. Always a fun event, the Millington Fire Department Oktoberfest, September 30th, noon to 11:30 p.m.
Ish.
Are you cooking, Brendan?
I will be cooking, yes.
Brendan will be cooking, along with other people?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes?
The Millington Fire Company website says 3 o'clock, not noon. The poster says noon. Do you know for sure which it is?
It'll be noon.
It will be
Oh,
noon.
what do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What- you Get your website.
11 and a
Okay,
half
well,
hours of
thanks.
partying.
It's from noon to what?
Till
11:30.
Ish.
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 When do we expect the big crowd, though? That's like 4?
Yeah.
Noon to 11:30.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's always been a very good event.
Yeah.
So,
Alert the Uber drivers.
yes, alert the Uber drivers. Flu shots are available October 18th at Town Hall. Residents $25, non-residents $35. There is no charge with the Medicare Part B card, and no appointment is necessary. Force is running a Tiger Tracks 5K race, October 29th, 7 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. at Central Middle School. Millington Downtown Day is October 15th. There's no time. Is that 11 to 3? Dennis, do you know?
I think it's 10 to 3,
10 to 3?
or 11 to 3.
10 or 11 to 3. We'll have a further announcement with a more accurate time. We'll have another meeting before then. So just mark October 15th on your calendars.
It is 11 to 3, as Dennis said.
Safe care cams are available. I'm going from memory on this. There was a flyer from the state.
It's on the website.
It is on the website. There is apparently a horribly large number of situations where care people for the elderly are actually being abusive and mistreating the people that they're supposed to be taking care of. So the state has made effectively nanny cams or spy cams available if you suspect someone who's taking care of your elderly parent of being abusive. You can borrow their camera to put in to attempt to monitor the situation. They are available by calling the New Jersey Division of Consumer Affairs at 800-242-5864. And again, the flyer is on the Long Hill Township website. The Halloween parade is October 22nd, 3 p.m. at Cantor Park. Dress scary, dress fun. There will be judges. Obstacle Course Day is October 14th from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Please pre-register on Community Pass. The Master Plan Committee, these two are important, are holding public work sessions for the public for the Sterling and Millington elements of the master plan. The Sterling session is going to be September 28th from 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. at the Senior Center. And the work session for Millington is October 5th from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., also at the Senior Center. The events are being run by the group from Morris County for Economic Development, so this is kind of what they do. Please show up, provide your input on what you think Sterling and Millington should look like. We have 4 special meetings or sessions scheduled at Town Hall for Q&A sessions regarding the sewer referendum. 2 township committee members will be present, usually myself and Guy, but if one of us can't make it, someone else will be there, and NJ American will be there. The dates are Monday, October 2nd at 7 p.m., Saturday, October 7th at 2 p.m., Tuesday, October 17th at 2 p.m., and Monday, October 30th at 10 a.m. So we've tried to give various times, various days of the week to try and make sure that there is a session available for anyone that wants to come. And with that,
And just add, any group that would like to.
and yes, and you know, to Guy's point, any group, any community that wants to sit down with us and speak to us, you're welcome to reach out. We're happy to come and answer any questions you might have. You should be informed when making your decision. And with that, I will open the meeting up to the public for comments on any matter.
Gary Janakis, Sterling. I had a question, Guy. You were speaking a little bit about an old ordinance, and I know that this is in some literature that came out with the township's newsletter about people having to hook up if you have septic. And you spoke that, you know, hey, it's in an old ordinance, and this is what happens when the sewer ban is lifted, I'm assuming is what the ordinance is? How's it worded?
It's in place now, but to be fair, I'd rather Jack, not that I don't want to answer you.
Sure.
It's Jack who I often run legal things by, so rather than play telephone on this.
I can tell you, I believe it requires, but I'll confirm that as we sit here, all properties within 200 feet to connect to the sewer system. There is a provision allowing a moratorium if you've had a new septic installed, and I think it lasts 20 years, but I'll confirm that.
And I read somewhere today, and I forget, it might have been, I don't know where I read it, to be honest with you. If the house was built before 1983, before the ordinance, they may be exempt as well?
Well, that's from the connection fee.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think I looked into something like
So
that.
that's a whole different, the connection fee is going to go away if the public question passes.
Yeah, because it becomes zero.
Right.
It's cheaper.
Correct.
$600 or something
Well,
now.
it's cheaper
no,
for
it's
the
10,000.
cheaper.
10,000 and 600.
Correct.
It's cheaper for the hookup fee, but it's not cheaper for the other work that has to be done for a resident who lives in a property that is now required to hook up.
Well, from house to street.
It'd be the same.
Free.
No, not from house to street.
That cost would be the same.
Yeah, it's the same as it is now.
Zero. Okay.
No,
Right.
not zero.
It would be the same as it is now.
Right.
There's 2 parts.
Yeah.
So today, if the township were to extend sewer service down a road, all those houses that were within 200 feet of that main would be required to connect. They would be required to pay us $10,200.
Right.
And they would have to pay their contractor to dig their house and to connect it to the sewer
Okay, that's the part
pipes.
that I wanted to ask about.
That exists today. If we extended service coverage, you have
Okay,
to connect
but-
today.
Right. We're not extending sewer coverage, but if
there
the
is-
referendum passes, somebody else will be.
Right, so they'll have to connect, but they won't have to pay the connection fee
Correct,
anymore.
correct.
Right, but
The
they'll have to pay the
$10,000.
work to get connected on their side.
so
Right?
it-
So that's the part that I want to talk about. For the residents who are now going to, or potentially be required if the referendum passes, is there anything in place to help those that might not have the money to be able to do that?
No, I don't believe so.
New Jersey America may have programs, or the state may, but the township doesn't.
No, the township doesn't have any program.
But we don't now.
But there would be no, they would only be responsible to pay their contractor to plug in. There would be no fee
Correct.
to actually make the
No,
connection.
I follow that. I'm
No,
just
yes, but
trying to think
no,
of it
there
from
is-
the
there is no-
standpoint of the
there is no-
people who
no, there
don't
is
have the
not.
money to
Correct.
hook up.
Correct.
And that's kind of like a stumbling block for them to want
Correct.
to accept this
Yes.
referendum, even though it may, may
That is
pass.
correct.
So,
Yes. They have 100,
just
they
as
would
that
have six,
ordinance
they would have
from-
6 months.
just as that ordinance from years ago required the hookup, if you ran a sewer line 200 feet within their house, is there a way to write an ordinance that doesn't necessarily require it? Or is that what you want them to do? You want them to hook up?
I don't think we could do anything at this point because the bid from New Jersey American was contingent upon the ordinance that required them to connect.
Correct, and DEP is encouraging the closing of septic, private sanitary sewer.
I can follow that
For
from a kind of
environmental reasons.
a environmental protection kind of idea. I kind of get that. But I'm just thinking from the dollars and cents of someone who was like, I'm being forced to hook up and I can't afford to. Now what do? We start finding those people?
They will, what is the regulation?
I mean, at the moment they're forced to, but it's more expensive for them at this moment in time, right? And so there's the other factor is that if you do hook up to the sewer, then down the road when you go to sell your house, it's probably there's a value associated with that, which you then recoup. But I think it's a situation everybody has to who encounters it. They have to make the decision for themselves on how they decide to do it. But personally, I think it's not something that we can help with.
Right.
We certainly
Well,
don't have anything in place.
I was just asking if there's a program out there, or if there was one, it would be great for those people to know about it.
There may be a
that's all.
program out there.
New Jersey,
Gary, to be fair, let me check. I'll check.
Yeah.
New
Jersey American.
I'm not saying that you have to do something, I'm just trying to figure out a way to, yeah.
well, no,
Yeah.
it's
So
a
let me
concern.
check with the state to see if there are any grants, because the DEP in fact encourages people to get off septic, so maybe they do have a program. And maybe NJ American Water has a program. So
Right.
We'll ask.
Because if all of a sudden you make it more palatable for them, then they're like, yeah, great, now I'm off a septic. And it was easy for me.
it's a fair question.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
let me look into it.
Okay.
Yeah,
And if you want, I'll answer you directly, but I think it's an answer that's
Oh, no,
worth saying
yeah.
publicly.
Yeah.
So,
Was there a difference between the one session I attended on I think it was on a Thursday or Friday night here, it wasn't well attended, and there was one at the senior center just this Monday, and now there's another 4 sessions, or were they?
They're all the same, except in the context of the engagement with different people. Different people are going to have different questions. I tend to try and give the same lead-in speech, I'll call it. I explain some background for a half an hour, maybe a little bit longer, to try and cut off some questions, but after that, it's whatever questions we get. We get different questions from different groups. Every session has been different.
Because the one I attended, I guess
Yeah.
the announcement didn't come out soon enough, so it wasn't very
Yeah,
well attended.
and they added another date as a result of that, because the dates were only finalized after we had a township committee meeting and after the newsletter already went to print, so we really didn't have a mechanism to get that out, so there was only a handful, but we have added another
and
meeting.
mail regarding that
Yeah,
was a couple
came
of
that
days
day- came
later
that
than the
day,
post
so,
office
yeah.
had said it was coming.
So we still have plenty of sessions, there's 4
Okay,
more
so
sessions.
That was
and-
related to the sewer thing, which is why I stood up when you said, does anyone have questions? I had questions, but I'm glad you followed, kind of the course of the meeting the way it should. And then I was thinking about some stuff as you were having the presentation from Elite for the redevelopment, and always want to thank you guys for volunteering your time for staying up here and, trying to make decisions to make the town kind of run smoothly. And also thank you for including all the public information sessions for the sewer plant referendum, the sewer referendum vote that's coming up. And, it kind of shows that when you make these decisions, you're trying to involve the public and keep everyone kind of advised of what's going on. For both the sewer plant, the redevelopment zone, and let me see, I scribbled down these notes and my handwriting's really bad. Urge you to continue to take the time to find out what people want for the whole town. With tonight's vote allowing Elite their hardship permit and submitting an actual number to the DEP for the number of apartments that they want, you've essentially endorsed what they want without any public input.
No, that's absolutely, I understand what you're saying, but that's absolutely untrue. That sounds like I'm saying you're not being honest. That's not the way it's going to work. That's why I said, I'm not approving 4 units for the property or 400. All we're saying is they can apply to the DEP for a waiver.
63 apartments and 6,800 square feet of retail space is what they're going to put down in black and white. And once you say a number, it's there.
But it gives them no rights to build that number.
No, it doesn't give them rights.
Approval.
It just kind of gives an idea of what they're doing.
I'm with you, and that's why I voted no. So,
Well-
I was all for their hardship application, but I was not
I
gonna
understand the
put-
hardship application too. I'm just saying, once you put a number,
I agree.
it's there. It's in black and white, and now it's submitted to the DEP because you approved it. And I understand we're not really backing them, but it's kind of like now it's in black and white. It's been said.
It's definitely been said, and it gives them absolutely no right to build anything at all. That authority still rests with this committee, and there will be multiple public hearings on it.
I'm sure there will. Hope to be here for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Any other comments?
Good evening.
Good evening, how are you? I'll keep it kind of short.
Haven't seen you since Monday night.
Yeah, absolutely. In regards to the sewer treatment plant and that type of thing, I went through a lot of the manholes in town. Actually, I went through just about every manhole in town that's on a street and accessible, relatively speaking, easily, of which we were supposed to have some form of cap or containment that stopped water from the street running down into the manhole cover, of which I found that there were roughly 40, yes.
Sorry to cut you off. Could you just give your name and address for the record,
John
please?
Bangs,
Sorry.
Millington.
I know who you are, but
Yeah, sorry about that. The otherwise known as a PIA.
Private investigator?
Yes, absolutely, yes. And so needless to say, I found roughly, I found more than 40 covers in town that have no plugs that stop the water from running from the road into the manhole cover itself. I found one in particular that drains just about what you'd be considered a lake that kids could play in every time it rains. There was an area of about 30 feet long and about 10 feet deep, with water that would be up to about 6 inches deep, that was draining completely into a manhole cover.
Were any of these on Valley or Myersville Road? Because they'll be addressed now.
Well, what I was going to say was, could you just get that list to Tom?
I've already
Sweeney,
gotten it,
please,
not to
and
Tom, but I've gotten it to Vince, okay? And the reason I got it to Vince is because he's in charge of the sewer treatment plant, and Tom is in charge of stormwater. Okay, and we're not talking about stormwater here, we're talking about sanitary
Well, they
sewer.
ultimately all report to Tom, so if you could copy Tom and also Nancy on that, and we can address that, because they were,
I gave a complete list to
we had an
Vince.
effort to take care of some of those, and obviously they've hopefully been trying to hit the worst areas first.
He told me that there was roughly 80% done.
Okay, so.
And I went through and everything was accessible on the streets.
Okay.
Checked them all.
Okay, thank you.
And that's what I came up with.
Thanks for
And-
doing it.
Yep.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you for not having me arrested or anything else like that for driving slowly down the street or parking with my flashers on and seeing if the manhole cover had a cover in it or not. The other thing in that same vein is that some of them, they already know about one in particular, which was the lake that drained into the manhole cover. The pick holes are, some of them are much bigger than others. That's the hole where you put the pickaxe to lift the cover up. And there are a number of very large ones within this group of 40 that are primarily the size of a drain in your kitchen sink. So if you were to imagine filling your kitchen sink up with water and pulling the drain and keeping the sink consistently filled with water, that's the volume that's going into those manhole covers every time it rains.
What, are these just old manhole covers, and that's the way it was way back when, or?
Previously, actually in the past, before I guess I became a big problem, they used to just put manhole covers with holes in them. And nobody thought about I&I and how much it cost to remediate it and everything else like that. So subsequently, they had no containment or thing that would actually stop the water from entering the manhole cover. And in the old days, it was a good thing because when we didn't have the availability of
Storm drain.
local water, well, not storm drains, but local water in your house, which would be brought in by the water company that we have today, where you can just turn on your faucet and you have tons of water. We had wells, and subsequently your well would run dry, and you probably put 20 or 30 gallons down the sewer, and that would be the end of it. And subsequently, what would happen is the pipes would start to get clogged up with material because there wasn't enough water to push it down to the sewage treatment plant. So what they did is they put manhole covers down with holes in them to allow the rainwater to actually wash the material down to the plant itself, because a lot of it's gravity drain. And in a single pipe system, like we have, which is, excuse me, I apologize, in a two-pipe system that we have, which is stormwater as one pipe and sanitary sewer as a secondary pipe, and them being totally separate, this is some of the problems that you'd run into in old downtown Sterling or in parts of Millington and that type of thing, where people were on septic and didn't have the volume of water going down the main. And so it would sit there for months at a time or weeks at a time until we got a good rainstorm, and then that cleared out everything right down to the sewage treatment plant. And so now what we're doing is, because of the I&I problems, we are trying to mitigate the amount of water going in. And so they came up with these upside down, it looks like a derby hat, and you lift up the manhole cover, and it's made out of plastic, and you place the derby hat down in the manhole upside down and replace the manhole on top of it. Now, when the derby hat fills up with water, it stays out on the street and flows over into the storm drains where it belongs. And subsequently, I've found 44 of those, or excuse me, not 44, 40 of those that don't have the hats in them. And they are in areas where, in some of them, there's hills on both sides. There's a storm sewer on each side, but there's a manhole right in the middle that's more convenient for the water to run down because water finds the simplest means and ways of getting in there and ways of least resistance. And so for it to get into the storm sewer, it's much easier for it to run right down the middle of the road and into the manhole. And the manhole's taking all the storm water. And approximately, from what I've been able to determine, that we, as an average, do 800,000 gallons a day to 1 million gallons a day as an average in our plant. Some days we get up to 1.6 million. But every time it rains, if we have an inch of rain, we also raise that volume by 1 million gallons. So
Sometimes
roughly,
more, right?
I can add on to that. If we only get an inch of rain, we're only going to get roughly an additional 1 million gallons. If we get 2 inches, we're looking at 2 million. If we get 4 inches, we're looking at 4 million. If we have over 4 inches, the gauge doesn't go any higher. So we have no idea.
And you just identified one of the reasons we're going to referendum.
That's
the main reason.
Exactly.
That is one of the talking points that we are well aware of. There are situations where, so our plant is rated for 900,000 gallons, and there are situations in I won't even say high, I'll say medium rain events, or if we have a wet season, where there are periods where we are pegging the needle at 4.5 million gallons. Now, that's not sustained for any significant duration,
24-hour
but
period
it's a
is what
couple-hour period, and that is, you know, the very reason why we are in a sewer ban. And one of the very reasons, because of those capital investments that we know we need to make in order to rectify that we've, this committee has chosen to put a referendum out to address those.
Understandably, and that these caps that go into the manhole covers run, and I'm just taking a rough guess, in manufacturing and knowing a little bit about manufacturing, I can't believe that they're any more than $30 a piece.
That they help, but they're not going to fix this problem.
Understandable, because it's actually in the pipes itself.
We have camera video from inside the pipes.
Yes.
Where there is a cable
I agree with you, but
that's been poked right through the pipe from.
There was one with a Volkswagen, right?
Yeah, your old toy Volkswagen. So, yeah, we're, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, they have the wastewater department has been pretty good about getting those
Vince
manhole
said he
covers
was
in.
actually going to go ahead and look at the
Yep.
situation and start actually working on them when he had the time. And the
Yep.
poor guy has very little time to get a lot done.
They have a lot of work right now. They're
Yes,
down another
exactly.
guy, so, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing all that.
Sure. Having done that, I also went to Paul, our engineer, and spoke with him because I was looking at a database for manholes, that how many manholes are on Valley Road. And there are photographs or drawings of where the manholes are, and you can physically count them out. But there is no spreadsheet or anything else like that that says that we have 25 manholes, I'm just throwing it up in the air, 25 manholes on Valley Road. And if so, where are they? And subsequently, we seem to be lacking in collecting our information and putting it out for the use of the general public.
We have a map with every manhole on it.
Yes, but we do not have something similar to a spreadsheet where if somebody says manhole number T44100, okay, where is it in town? No idea. You have to look at the map, and you have to go through the whole map to look up where.
That's part of their
Yeah.
operations that.
And I think that particular one's on Main Avenue, about halfway up.
Okay, well, needless to say, I'm putting together one of those databases for you, and having talked to Paul, he said, I'm sorry, I don't have enough time to talk to you. Basically said, go away. And I was like taken back by it. And there was another individual there who was also very shocked by his response. I also spoke to him about a tank that is, we have Central School. When you're facing Central School, to the left of it, there is a basketball field. Underneath that basketball court, I should say, there is a tank. That tank was put in, I believe it was 2004, by Aqua Shield. The purpose for the tank was to drain water off of the school roof and off of the back field and redirect the water that came down and filled the holding pond there that was there at one point in time, and settle out all the sludge and then let the fresh water drain into Sterling Pond. That's supposed to be cleaned out, according to the manufacturer, every 2 years. And I spoke to Paul, I spoke to, I'm just trying to think, one other person, and they both said it went to the board of, the school board, to be able to maintain it. and it hasn't been maintained to anybody's knowledge for the last 15 years or thereabouts.
That's an issue for the school.
Yeah,
board,
that's school board
though.
property, right?
Have absolutely
Well,
no
here's the problem.
purview.
Okay. The problem is that if that tank is full of material, biological material, you have nothing more than a septic tank in there that's percolating away, and the water's running out of the tank into Sterling Pond, where everybody's swimming. And the other problem is if it does get cleaned out, what do we do with all the sludge that comes out of it? I emailed the Board of Education, and I don't remember right off the top of my head the person, but she was supposedly in charge of it. And I haven't gotten a response back as to when and how many times it's actually been cleaned out. I don't think it's ever been maintained personally. Now, I could be 100% wrong, and I've been there in the past.
To be fair, you probably follow up with them. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, and it seems like we have a little bit of a maintenance issue in town in regards to things that need to be maintained. Obviously, the sewage treatment plant hasn't been upgraded since 1990, from what I understand. That was the last major investment in it.
2013.
2013? Okay,
We put money into it.
About $4 million?
4 million. Well, 3 if you take out the million for the I&I remediation.
So it's about 13 years since the last
Correct.
time
I think
previous to
I think he's speaking to the plant itself. So there, yes, you're right, but, you know,
And how do we, if we do a little more maintenance around town, with not only our sewage treatment, but our water runoff, our stormwater runoff, I think the town would be a better and cleaner place
if we could go back in time, perhaps, but.
Well, starting from here forward, why don't we set up some forms of maintenance schedules? I'm sure the environmental committee.
Hey, Cornell, you could speak to this better than I can. That's exactly what we did until we came upon the idea that it was, what was it?
Right.
We spent $1 million for I&I and you got 3%?
Mm-hmm.
Do the math.
Yes, but
$1 million for 3%.
I understand that, yes.
The
Yes, and I
numbers
understand
just-
the arguments for and against and everything else like that, and quite frankly, my coin is still in the air, but needless to say, throughout the entire town, okay, we cut the grass and we do all sorts of things along those lines. In fact, I found in front of Central School, one of the contractors had actually taken the entire top off the clean out for the clean out for the sewage treatment, or actually for the sanitary sewer, and I found another 4 or 5 of them in town. And to this point forward, they haven't been remediated whatsoever. But needless to say, it's just an open 4-inch line that water can just pour right down, and as much of it wants to go can, and does.
I mean, we can't, I mean, I don't doubt that they exist, but we can't keep track of 2,800 open pipes on private property.
No, I
So if we know
understand.
about them, please
Yeah.
let Tom know, and we can,
2,613. I apologize.
no, that's all right.
Also in stormwater runoff, down at the end of, when you go past Chimney Rock, there's a road in there, it's Linda Lane or something along those lines, I don't remember the name of it.
Laura Drive?
Laura Drive, yes, thank you. There is crossovers where the storm sewers cross over the sewage treatment lines. And so if you have a rupture in the treatment line, the storm sewer is above it, you're literally can be draining right down into the line itself. And that's very obvious when you go down there and take a look at it. You can see the mishmash and the crisscross of the pipes and that type of thing. So you really don't know what's running in the storm water, whether it's sewage into the storm water or storm water into the sewage, whichever way, you know, it decides to flow. It's water. It seeks its own.
We want the sewage in the water, that's the.
Its own course. And that's kind of it on the.
If you could send those to Tom and also copy Nancy,
Okay.
and we can have someone look into those things.
Okay, all right. The other one real quick, and I'll let you go on this one, and that is our low-income housing was set at 220 units. Am I correct on that?
54. So 54 rental units?
Well, 220 was the
Well,
starting
sorry,
point.
220 was the starting point, however, we were able to, and that's down from 331, don't quote me on the exact number.
70%.
70%, and then we were able to get some credits applied, and the net result is 54 rental units or 72.
That sounds right. It's one's 15%.
One is
20%.
single-family residence, so one is rated at 15% and the other is at 20.
How is it that we know or do not know how many people in town that are on low-income housing or in low-income housing facilities?
We do
Is
know
it through
that.
the county or is it through?
No, we have.
Under the Mount Laurel cases, we have to provide our fair share for the region. So it's not just for the township.
I understand that, but here's what I'm saying is that there probably are, to the best of my knowledge, some people that are on Section 8 and low-income housing that I've known personally that live in private rentals. And subsequently, if we do not know about them and could find out who they are, we could put them on our rolls and therefore reduce our liability down to zero.
I don't think we can put them on our rolls unless we permanently dedicate that to low income.
There is one mechanism for accessory apartments, which we've had for years, and in fact, we've satisfied a reasonable number of our units through those. But there have to be deed restrictions on the property. So it's not just the fact that somebody qualified lives in somewhere. It has to be, the property has to be deed restricted or whatever.
If the property itself is accepting help from the county, okay, or the state.
But
and
there's no guarantee that they will accept tomorrow,
who will accept tomorrow?
the property owner.
Yes.
So they may
okay.
be Section 8 today, and next year the property may sell, and the guy may say, I'm not doing Section 8 anymore.
Okay.
And that is insufficient for fair share to agree to.
I see. Okay, because I was going to say, we may already meet our requirements or be well over our requirements.
They
If
want
we
it.
have 100 or 200 people that are on Section 8 in town, but only 10 of them are.
I wish.
Yeah, remember, it's a zoning, it's a zoning restriction, not a.
Section 8 is a rezoning?
No,
Or is
zoning.
Is a zoning
Mount
problem?
Laurel deals with zoning to provide for affordable housing. It doesn't matter how many people that qualify for affordable housing live in town or where they live, unless they live in those particular units that have been zoned and included as part of the fair share plan.
The township has to restrict
Yes.
what can be there. And currently, those houses you're referencing are not restricted. The property owners are making a choice today,
Not to be in Section 8.
or to be in Section 8.
Or to be in
But
Section 8.
there's
Which way?
nothing that prevents them from not being
Okay.
in affordable
Well,
housing area
We might be able to
tomorrow.
approach different people that might be willing to do that because it's a guaranteed income. If,
Well, those are,
Well, they
If
can
Morris-
apply for accessory apartment status
right.
and get actually a subsidy from the town, which we have to give, I think it's a $20,000 subsidy for an accessory apartment. So it may be worth their while, because I think we include 5 accessory apartments in this plan. I'd have to double check.
Okay.
So,
Well, it might be
You know, if
one
there are
way
5
of
people out there that want
satisfying
that.
our section, or our low-income housing by virtue of offering these incentives, if you wish, to private homeowners or private apartment houses.
but there's a limit as to how many of those we can have as part of our fair share plan. It gets into minute details to what we have to provide.
Understandable, but we don't have any knowledge of who's willing to participate and who's not willing to participate. If in fact you find out that you have an overwhelming amount of people that are willing to participate, well, then we just go up to whatever the specified limits are and run with it from there. And that lowers our liability, but we don't know till we find out. And that would be sending out a letter or something, who would be willing to, who are apartments in town, owners, would they be interested or willing to join in? And then we may, if we find out that there's too many, we might even have to run a lottery to figure out who's going to be in it and who isn't.
Well, we will have to consider that for the next time around,
And,
because the agreement has been approved by fair share today,
Yeah,
so it goes to the judge.
okay.
At
And the
this
other
point.
question would be, have we included anybody in?
I'm sorry?
Have we asked anybody to be in it that would curtail the amount of?
For the
for
Section
this-
8 and stuff?
Yeah, for this time around.
Have we haven't gone out and proactively asked anyone for Section 8 or anything like that?
To
correct?
volunteer in Section 8 or whatever it happens.
No, we have in the past advertised the availability of subsidies, and we probably will once this plan is approved by the court.
Okay.
But even though you get a $20,000 subsidy, you have to agree to all the strings that go with it, so.
Well, I'm thinking that I know somebody who's in Section 8, and the landlord themselves gets $500 a month guaranteed from the county, and the person who's in Section 8 has to come up with the difference. And it's roughly $1,000, so they have to come up with $500 a month. But the baseline is whether the person who's working and paying the other half, or the half that he's supposed to or she's supposed to pay, then at least it's $500 you don't have to chase after, and which would be an incentive in itself. If 50% of the rent is absolutely guaranteed, it's probably not a bad deal, and the other is speculative.
Okay.
And, with that, I have one more, and that's the development of downtown Sterling, Main Street and South Main Street. As you probably all know, South Main Street was paved by the EPA. They came in and paved from the stoplight all the way down to probably within 1,000 feet of the river. And it was all contaminated soil with virtually everything you can think of in it. And I know somebody refers to it as being an asbestos hugger, but I don't particularly care about asbestos, to be frank with you. I more care about the chemicals that are in it and the toxicity of the chemicals that are there. And they are there, they're measurable, they've measured them. The EPA has measured them. They had 2 independent companies come in and measure it. And subsequently, behind the Speedy Mart, there is a fence back there that says do not cross, DEP inspection, or DEP restricted and that type of thing. That whole area back there is filled with arsenic, okay? It's a tremendous amount of arsenic. The company that owns that piece of property is in Morristown, and they're a fairly large corporation, from what I understand, and they're very aware of the fact that it's back there. The DEP is very aware that it's back there, and that's only one spot. The house that's boarded up on the corner of South Main and Valley was also inspected by the EPA and deemed that it had, besides asbestos, it had a number of other chemicals in the ground. 3 houses down or west, they dug up, it was, I think, about an acre of land or an acre and a half of land down to about 6 feet and refilled it, and they just dug it up again because they found the soil that they put in didn't meet the specifications of the DEP or the EPA.
Can I just ask
Yes.
can you wrap up, please? Because we still have to jump into exec, so
Yeah,
if you could.
no, we just have to
Thank
proceed
you.
with much, much more caution than recklessness in town of just letting people dig where they want to and build where they want to. The child care center and the bicycle shop ran into asbestos. I only say asbestos, but because that's an obvious thing, but what goes along with it are the hidden toxins that you don't know about that will kill you. And that also holds true when they dug up the sewer line at the Tifa site, which is about 100 feet away from the mound. The EPA came in and looked at it and said, we may have to put deed restrictions, more deed restrictions on the land, because they ran into the dirt that held 35% asbestos in it. But that is almost irrelevant because it has methylated mercury in it. Now, that big pile of dirt ran all the way down in front of the gymnasium, and I was watching kids walk through it. And there was more methylated mercury in that dirt than has been in any one of all your teeth throughout your entire life that they were exposed to. And everybody walks away, and 10 years later, you have neurological problems, and you have no reason, you can't figure out where it came from. And as a 5 or 6 year-old child walking through this material, that's a body burden for life. And so we're dealing with some serious stuff. And it's just not a matter of, well, let's put it up, because if they're digging in the TIFA site and somebody comes up with a whole shovel full of material and dumps it, okay, and it's a windy day and the guy doesn't know what he's digging up, the next thing you know, you have the entire, within a 1,000-yard radius.
I got to cut you off, John. I'm
The
sorry.
place has to
Thank
be
you.
shut down or bought out because it's
Okay.
contaminated the whole town. So when you think about building, some buildings versus what's there now, you may just shut the whole town down and not allow it to be functioning as a town anymore. And that's happened numerous times throughout the United States.
Thank you, John.
I
thank you.
I apologize. for
Appreciate
taking
it.
so much
All
time.
right, thank you.
Thanks for the work on
Appreciate
the
it.
map.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, can I get a motion for
Motion to go
exec
into executive.
with no further action taken? Is that correct?
Correct. Are you making the motion or am I making the motion?
I said, can I get a motion,
So
please?
moved.
Thanks. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye, thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.